She married him because of poverty. But after 10 days she realized she was trapped. He was 4 times older, but had a secret that turned her life around. No one believed she had done it out of love, until the truth exploded across the country. Post in the comments, where are you watching from? In the ruby twilight of a poverty-stricken neighborhood in rural Louisiana, where crumbling sidewalks and dilapidated storefronts testified to generations of hardship, lived a young woman named Alea. At barely 20 years old, Alea carried the weight of loss, responsibility, and hope on her slender shoulders. Born into affliction in a world that cared little for the promise of the disadvantaged, she had grown up amidst the muted symphony of struggle, a daily battle against hunger, neglect, and the slow, lingering pain of absent parents. Her childhood had been marked by quiet resilience and an unwavering determination to reclaim dignity from the ashes of despair. With her father long gone and her mother lost to illness when Alea was but a girl, she had assumed the role of protector and provider for her younger brother, Malik, whose gentle smile belied the hardships he too faced. Every day, as she shuffled along the cracked pavement, her thoughts were consumed by dreams of a better future. One where her relentless efforts might lift both of them out of the cycle of poverty and allow Malik a chance for education and an unburdened life. Alea was known in her neighborhood for her steadfast spirit and kind heart. Neighbors often recalled how, despite the meager resources at her disposal, she would share whatever little she had with a hungry neighbor or offer comforting words to those downtrodden by circumstance. Free-spirited yet matured quickly by loss, she had learned early that sometimes survival depended not just on physical strength, but on a compassionate resolve, a force that drew hope from even the bleakest prospects. She nurtured dreams of transforming her family's narrative, perceiving education and opportunity as the most potent weapons against the crippling certainty of her environment. Deep in her heart, she believed that if she could pave a path out of poverty, Malik's life, too, could bloom into something bright, beautiful, and full of promise. One humid afternoon, as the languid Louisiana sun dipped into the horizon, Alea found herself waiting at a modest bus stop near the worn wooden steps of a local community center. The air vibrated with the distant strains of a blues guitar, and the scent of magnolia and fried catfish mingled in the sultry breeze. Amidst the mosaic of her daily routine, of shared stories, whispered dreams, and struggles hard-fought, fate had already begun to write a new chapter in her life. It was on that very day that Alea's gaze fell upon a man whose presence was as unexpected as it was enigmatic. He was seated on a creaking bench under the faded awning of a closed-down store, his silver hair contrasting starkly with the deep lines of solitude etched onto his face. This was Mr. Henry, a 70-year-old gentleman whose life, like a long-forgotten melody, seemed both sorrowful and imbued with a mysterious grace. Unlike many of his peers in that small town who might have sneered at fate's odd choices, Mr. Henry exuded a warmth and respect rarely found in someone so weathered by time. His eyes, a pale blue that betrayed a gentle kindness, met Alea's with a level of genuine curiosity and understanding that made her heart flutter with a mix of apprehension and hope. Their initial conversation was tentative, a polite exchange born of mutual recognition of loneliness and a shared desire to be seen. Mr. Henry spoke with a soft, deliberate cadence, his voice carrying the echoes of experiences long past. He told her about quiet nights spent reading old books in a grand, abandoned mansion he once called home, and about the joy of small kindnesses found in everyday moments. Alea, though cautious of strangers in a world where every welcome carried its weight in suspicion, found herself drawn to his respectful demeanor. In his carefully chosen words, she sensed not exploitation but a rare authenticity, a promise that behind his fragile appearance lay wisdom, compassion, and perhaps an opportunity for redemption. The conversation deepened rapidly, and before long, Mr. Henry expressed sentiments that startled her in their sincerity. "Alea," he said gently, his eyes earnest and hopeful, "life has a peculiar way of giving us unexpected chances. I have known loss, loneliness, and regret, but I also know that sometimes one chance can change the course of destiny. I find myself longing for a connection, something to fill the void and perhaps, in these twilight years, grant me a new purpose. I wonder, would you consider sharing your life with me? Let me be the guiding light that can help change your poverty-stricken world into one of opportunity and care." Those words, though unconventional by any measure, resonated deeply with Alea. Amid her daily struggles, the idea of an alliance, however perplexing at first, shimmered as a beacon. To marry a man 70 years her senior was not a decision made lightly, and yet the sincerity in his warm smile and the respectful gravitas in his tone cut through the cacophony of a world that had long denied her dignity. In that moment, the possibility of transformation, of rewriting a story of loss into one of hope, seemed palpable. Alea saw in Mr. Henry not the figure of an exploitative manipulator, but the unexpected hand of fate extended in an act of genuine humanity. Embracing the opportunity, she agreed to his proposal, seeing it as a chance to change her destiny and build a sanctuary where both her and her beloved brother Malik could finally breathe without fear. Thus, under the melancholy twilight of Louisiana, Alea stepped into a future enshrouded in mystery, a future where love, sacrifice, and the unknown would soon converge. Little did she know that the next chapter of her life would be marked not only by domestic comfort and unexpected warmth, but by secrets that would shatter and then rebuild everything she thought she knew about trust, fate, and the power of transformation. The long-anticipated wedding arrived on a sultry summer afternoon in a small, modest chapel tucked away in one of Louisiana's impoverished quarters. Alea, radiant in a simple white lace dress that had been lovingly sewn by a neighbor, walked down the aisle with a mix of trepidation and hope. Her eyes shimmered with dreams of a better future, even as her heart bore scars from years of loss and hardship. Family members and neighbors gathered in a humble assembly, some with tearful smiles, others with cautious wonder, as they witnessed a young woman of unyielding strength pledge herself to a man 70 years her senior. Mr. Henry, dignified despite the weight of his years, stood at the altar with a serene yet enigmatic smile, his presence both commanding and gentle. His silver hair and kind blue eyes, softened by lived-in sorrow and quiet wisdom, lent him an aura of experience and compassion. In that unlikely union, whispered gossip mingled with genuine admiration. Many believed that through his affection, Alea might finally be offered the chance to leave behind a life of struggle and achieve the stability needed not only for her own sake but, most importantly, for her beloved younger brother Malik. For Alea, who had long nurtured dreams of providing Malik with opportunities that she herself had been denied, the marriage symbolized a potential turning point, a doorway to possibility amid a world that too often seemed stacked against her. After the brief, heartfelt ceremony, the couple, joined by a small retinue of friends and a few cautiously optimistic relatives, departed for Mr. Henry's grand estate, a massive, albeit time-worn, mansion looming at the outskirts of town. The mansion, a relic from an era of forgotten opulence, was as imposing as it was desolate. Ivy clung to its crumbling stone walls, and tall windows reflected a mixture of fading light and lingering mystery. To Alea, the estate was an entirely new world, far removed from the crowded, dilapidated blocks of her neighborhood. The sweeping lawns and echoing halls promised both warmth and refuge, yet they also whispered secrets of solitude and abandonment. In the days following the wedding, as she adjusted to the slow, measured rhythm of life in the mansion, Alea began to notice subtle yet unsettling details. Mr. Henry welcomed her with a tenderness that imbued every gesture. He would prepare her breakfast in the expansive, sunlit kitchen, sharing stories of his youth and speaking kindly about his lost loved ones. Yet, an undercurrent of strangeness wove through their daily routine. Almost every evening, just as twilight draped the estate in a melancholic haze, Mr. Henry would excuse himself with vague reason, vanishing from the common areas of the house for several hours on end. His departure was accompanied by a solemn refusal to divulge any details, leaving Alea with a growing sense of perplexity and quiet dread. Shortly after her arrival at the mansion, Mr. Henry laid down certain inexplicable rules. With a gentle but firm tone, he instructed her never to venture into the mansion's basement, a vast, shadowy space that he insisted was off-limits. "The basement holds memories better left untouched," he would say cryptically, his eyes darkening for a fleeting moment before quickly regaining their tranquil composure. Though his words were masked as paternal concern, they stirred a restless unease in Aleya's heart. The forbidden nature of the basement gnawed at her curiosity. It was as though a part of his past, and perhaps their future, was concealed beneath those cold, cobwebbed stairs. At first, the mansion and its strange routines filled Aleya with both awe and cautious optimism. The vast halls, adorned with faded portraits and antique furniture, spoke of a lost grandeur, while Mr. Henry's thoughtful care promised her stability and a chance at a brighter beginning. He enveloped her in kindness, ensuring that each day began with gentle words and small acts of care. A steaming cup of coffee in the early morning, or a patient hand on her shoulder when despair threatened to resurface. Still, as night fell and Mr. Henry departed for his mysterious absences, the emptiness of the mansion seemed to echo with unanswered questions. The first few days were a whirlwind of adjustments. Aleya busied herself with tidying the dusty rooms and learning the secrets of the sprawling estate, all the while balancing the responsibility of her own past and the hope of securing a future for Malik. She hunted for clues in isolated corners, a dusty journal tucked away in a forgotten drawer, a broken clock that had ceased to mark time decades ago, but nothing gave her a clear sense of the mansion's hidden truths. Each return from Mr. Henry's nightly wanderings left a void, an absence of explanation that grew heavier with every mysterious disappearance. Yet, even amid these disquieting signs, Mr. Henry continued to act with unwavering warmth during the day. He would ask after her well-being with genuine concern and share encouraging words about pursuing education or new beginnings. His duality, simultaneously the embodiment of generosity and secretive retreat, left Aleya in a state of inner conflict. She found herself questioning, could a man who exuded such kindness harbor secrets that warranted such strict prohibitions and nightly escapes? Was his behavior a manifestation of protectiveness? Or did it hide contradictions that might endanger the fragile happiness she had dared to hope for? In quiet moments, while alone in the vast corridors of the mansion, Aleya's mind would wander to the past she left behind, the struggles that defined her youth, and the promise she made to her brother. Each memory was interlaced with bittersweet hope, a hope that this new life, however strange and unsettling, might ultimately lead to the transformation she so yearned for. And yet, as the days turned into nights filled with unexplained absences and silences behind locked doors, the seed of doubt began to sprout. The mansion, with all its grand appearances, seemed to harbor secrets that beckoned her to uncover deeper truths. Thus, as the first week of her married life unfolded in a delicate balance between warmth and mystery, Aleya found herself at the crossroads of trust and suspicion. The elegance of Mr. Henry's gestures did little to dispel the growing whisper of unease, a whisper that perhaps the sanctuary she had envisioned was in fact a gateway to unexpected revelations. Every smile he offered during the day, every comforting word, was shadowed by the enigmatic rules he enforced. And with each passing night, as Mr. Henry vanished into the darkness, Aleya's silent determination to understand the hidden facets of her new home and her new husband grew stronger. In the midst of this elegant and eerie transition, Aleya resolved to remain patient and measured. She reminded herself that every great revelation requires time to bloom, and that sometimes the most profound truths lie hidden beneath layers of silence. With her heart full of cautious hope and a spirit tempered by past trials, she prepared herself for what the coming days might reveal, a journey into a mystery that would change her life forever. In the weeks following her arrival at the mansion, the initial excitement of a life transformed began to give way to subtle hints of disquiet. As Aleya navigated her new world, a sprawling estate filled with antique grandeur and quiet solitude, a veil of mystery slowly draped itself over her daily existence. Every corner, every shadow in the corridor, carried with it an ineffable secret, whispering of memories best left unexamined. Amidst the elegance and care exuded by Mr. Henry during the daylight hours, a series of inexplicable behaviors began to stir doubts and awaken a curious, almost desperate need to understand what truly lay beneath the surface of her new home. Nightfall became an especially troublesome time for Aleya. Each evening, just as the hues of sunset deepened into twilight, Mr. Henry would excuse himself with gentle words that seemed rehearsed. A promise to take care of a few personal matters, or the vague mention of some old business to attend to. For several hours each night, the mansion would fall into an eerie silence. The corridors that once echoed with polite conversation now whispered with emptiness, punctuated only by the soft, measured ticking of an ancient grandfather clock in the foyer. Outside, the mansion's high windows glowed dimly, but no sign of Mr. Henry could be seen. His sudden, unexplained absences raised unspoken questions that nibbled at Alea's peace. It began one particular night when Alea, unable to sleep because the silence felt thick and oppressive, found herself pacing the long, dim hallway outside her room. The mansion, vast and labyrinthine, seemed to hold its breath in the dark. Her mind, too, was alive with suspicion. Every creak of the wood, every sigh of the wind through the tall, unkempt hedges, amplified her mounting anxiety. Were those the sounds of footsteps that didn't belong? Had Mr. Henry left footsteps behind on the polished wooden floor? The unanswered questions circulated like restless phantoms in her thoughts, making her pulse quicken. The most perplexing rule, however, was the strict prohibition against entering the basement. Mr. Henry had explained it in a hushed tone during one of his rare moments of vulnerability, vaguely referring to memories that were better left untouched and painful remnants of a past too heavy for this place. Yet, that forbidden space, hidden beneath the mansion's grandeur, drew Alea's curiosity like a moth to a flickering light. The basement door itself was a heavy, iron-bound portal at the end of a long corridor, warded off by an old oak door with intricate carvings that had seen better days. Whenever she approached that threshold, an inexplicable shiver ran down her spine, as if the door itself whispered warnings in a language of sorrow and regret. During the daytime, Mr. Henry's gentle demeanor and attentive care soothed her worries. He would fix her tea, smile reassuringly when she spoke of her dreams for her brother Malik, and share small stories that hinted at a kind soul who had known both joy and heartbreak. But these moments of tenderness were invariably followed by the chilling routine each night. His silent departure that left the mansion steeped in mystery. The dichotomy between his daytime warmth and the darkness that swallowed him after dusk fanned the flames of her internal conflict. Was this simply a man carrying a personal burden too heavy to share? Or was there something far more intricate and possibly dangerous behind his nightly vanishings? Unable to erase the nagging thoughts that marred the edges of her new reality, Alea began to observe. She kept a quiet ledger of every odd occurrence. The exact times Mr. Henry disappeared, the fleeting sounds of whispered conversation echoing from distant rooms, and the subtle shifts in the ambience of the mansion once the night claimed its due. Late one night, while wrapped in the thin cotton of her bedroom sheets, she heard a faint, rhythmic creaking in what she now suspected was the vicinity of the forbidden basement. A steady, almost mechanical sound that grew louder as if something heavy was being dragged down the stairs. Her heart pounded in protest, and a cold sweat broke out along her forearms. The sound was deliberate, methodical. It wasn't simply the rumble of an old house settling in its age. There was purpose behind it. Her mind raced. Could the basement be a repository of Mr. Henry's hidden past? Was it a vault for secrets too burdensome to carry in the light of day? And if so, what did those secrets hold? Images of dusty boxes filled with forgotten letters, abandoned photographs of desperate families, or even records of clandestine deeds flickered unbidden through her thoughts. Alea's curiosity, fierce and unyielding like the flame of a lone candle in the darkness, urged her to learn more. Yet every instinct warned her that this was a threshold not to be crossed lightly. Trust warred with trepidation in her heart. Every tender memory of Mr. Henry's kind care was now tempered by the possibility of betrayal, or something far more tragic. During the day, she discreetly examined the mansion. In a quiet corner of a neglected library, she discovered fragments of old letters, faded and yellowed, tucked away in a secret drawer. The words spoke of lost causes and unfulfilled promises, of a man who had once used his substantial wealth to champion the forgotten and downtrodden. At that moment, a tentative hypothesis took root in her mind. Perhaps Mr. Henry's nightly absences and the sealed basement held the remnants of a forgotten life. a legacy of compassion hidden under layers of personal anguish and isolation. In secret, she began piecing together the puzzle, questioning the fragments of documents, the cryptic hints in his stories, and the silent spaces where answers should reside. Each passing day deepened the enigma. Mr. Henry's nightly departures were always cloaked in a respectful silence. He never offered an explanation, just a sorrowful glance that hinted at burdens too complex for simple words. Alea, bound by both love and a firm resolve to understand her new life, chose not to confront him directly, for fear of shattering the fragile trust that had begun to blossom. Instead, she resolved to uncover the truth on her own, to gently pry open the locked door to the basement and discover what lay beneath. Was he protecting her from a painful past? Or could it be that he was testing her, gauging her character and intentions? These quiet battles within her soul became the soundtrack of her days, as she juggled the love and light he so generously offered with the shadow of secrets lurking in the mansion's depths. The questions, once mere whispers on a humid night, crescendoed into a siren call that demanded resolution. With every measured step and every stolen glance at the forbidding basement door, Alea's determination grew. She knew that if the truth were hidden in the darkness below, then it was her destiny to bring it into the light, even if that revelation would forever change the delicate balance of trust and fear in her heart. In the lonely hours before dawn, as the mansion slept and the echo of Mr. Henry's clandestine activities faded into silence, Alea sat by her bedside, pen in hand, chronicling every nuance of her suspicion. For every kind word he had offered, there were silent, unnerving questions left unanswered. And so, beneath the dim glow of a flickering lamp, she resolved that soon, very soon, she would venture towards the door of the forbidden basement and uncover the secrets that Mr. Henry had so carefully hidden. Little did she know that even this act of quiet defiance would become the catalyst for a transformative journey, one that would upend her understanding of love, legacy, and the true meaning of hope. As the days passed within the mansion's austere walls, Alea's initial wonder began to give way to a disquiet she could no longer ignore. Each morning brought gentle kindness from Mr. Henry, a soft word, a warm meal, the tender way he brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. But as dusk fell and the corridors of the house swallowed him in silence, a chill of uncertainty seeped into her heart. The rule about the basement still loomed large, an ironclad prohibition that curdled her thoughts every time she passed the carved, heavy door at the end of the hall. In that forbidden space, hidden beneath layers of dust and unspoken regret, lay secrets that beckoned her with a silent urgency. Every evening, as Mr. Henry would excuse himself to attend to his old business, Alea's mind raced. She clutched her little notebook, scribbling down the exact time of his departures, the room temperatures that dipped ominously at night, and the almost musical creaks and thuds emanating from below. Was that the sound of someone or something being moved in the darkness? Or was it merely the groaning of a grand old house settling into its history? In her vulnerable yet determined state, the ambiguity became a battleground between trust and suspicion. In fleeting moments of solitude, when the mansion's vast corridors lay empty and the heavy curtains locked out the last rays of sunlight, Alea's internal conflict deepened. Her heart still clung to every kind gesture Mr. Henry offered during daylight hours. He had treated her with a respect and warmth that she had never known in her old life. But as night drew near, the man she believed might save her from a lifetime of poverty revealed an unsettling duality. Was the tender, well-mannered husband merely a facade, a mask to hide a painful past he wished neither to share nor repeat? Or was it possible that this secret, this mystery locked safely in the basement, was in fact an act of protection, a way for him to shield her from burdens too heavy for her to bear? Haunted by the silence behind the locked door, Alea wrestled with the idea of seeking answers. The basement, with its unyielding prohibition, symbolized everything unspoken and unknown in her new existence. Late at night, her thoughts wandered like restless phantoms. In one such night of insomniac vigil, she sat by her bedside in the candlelit quiet, steeling herself for the possibility of unveiling the truth. Torn between abiding by her promise to maintain trust and the burning need for clarity, for her own liberation and for the future of her brother Malik, She felt the weight of destiny press upon her. The temptation to flee, to abandon the mansion and its hidden enigmas, crept in during moments of fearful introspection. Perhaps she could return to the familiar struggles of her old neighborhood, where at least the world was plain and unpretentious. Yet even the thought of such an escape was interlaced with guilt and despair. She had seen kindness in Mr. Henry's eyes, and the prospect of losing the sanctuary he offered reminded her that change, however uncertain, was still better than the relentless poverty she and Malik had always known. One rainy afternoon, when the mansion was cloaked in a gray melancholy, Alea resolved to quench her swelling curiosity. She began her quest in earnest, probing the mansion for any clues that might demystify the basement's ominous secret. In the quiet recesses of the dusty library, beneath rows of forgotten books and yellowed newspapers, she discovered a bundle of old letters tucked between the pages of a fragile journal. The letters, written in ornate handwriting, spoke of a man who had once been a benefactor, an anonymous patron who had lavished support on struggling families, building shelters and offering hope when life had been at its lowest ebb. Some of the letters hinted at promises of reform and a life dedicated to the service of the downtrodden, all of which resonated deeply with Alea. Her discovery sent a shiver down her spine. Was it possible that Mr. Henry's mysterious behavior was less a sign of malevolence and more a remnant of a past filled with grief and betrayal? The documents seemed to offer a different narrative, a tapestry of compassion woven into personal tragedy. Yet, for every tantalizing fragment of evidence she uncovered, the basement remained an impregnable mystery, its secrets guarded by a physical barrier and, perhaps, by Mr. Henry's own fears. Driven by this mounting inner turmoil, Alea stealthily began to plan an escape from the press of uncertainty. One humid evening, when Mr. Henry had once again disappeared into the labyrinthine recesses of his ancestral home, she gathered a few precious belongings and slipped quietly from her room. Her footsteps were soft on the marble floors as she navigated the twisting corridors, her mind a cyclone of hope, trepidation, and the raw desire for truth. The thought of leaving the mansion, of returning to the familiarity of her old life, lit a spark of liberation within her. But deep down, intertwined with that yearning was the realization that she might be abandoning a piece of herself, the chance to reclaim a legacy that had been hidden from the world. Standing at the doorway leading to the basement corridor, her hand trembled as she reached for the door's handle. In that suspended moment, every conflicting emotion surged within her. The warmth of trust and the icy grip of fear, the promise of love and the threat of betrayal. As the rain pattered softly against the windows overhead, Alea's soul teetered on the brink of decision. Would she break the sacred silence imposed upon her, or would she allow the mysteries to fester in secrecy a little while longer? Her inner voice whispered unceasingly. To know the truth was to own her destiny. With a resolute yet quivering exhale, she pressed her hand against the cold metal of the handle, her mind awash with memories of hardship, hope, and the relentless quest for a better life. Stepping forward, she teetered at the intersection of loyalty and liberation, an innocent in a labyrinth of secrets, determined to pull aside the heavy curtain that concealed the legacy of the man who had promised her salvation. In that charged moment, as shadows danced on the walls and the thunder of distant storms echoed the tumult within, Alea took the first tremulous step toward unmasking the truth. The silence of the mansion awaited her as both a hushed threat and the promise of revelation, and the journey she was about to embark on would irrevocably alter not only her own fate, but the destiny of all those whose lives she had yet to touch. That fateful 10th day, the weight of her uncertainty had grown too immense for Alea to bear. With night's velvet cloak wrapping the mansion in silence, she activated the resolve that had been building within her since the first whispers of mystery. The forbidden basement door, once looming as an ominous barrier at the end of the desolate corridor, now beckoned her with a magnetic pull. Her trembling hand reached out, and with a determined twist of the old, rusted key she had discovered hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the library, she unlocked the door. As the heavy door creaked open, a chilly gust of musty air swept over her face, a mingling of damp earth, decaying paper, and long-forgotten memories. Alea hesitated at the threshold, heart pounding in her ears like a drum of warning and anticipation. Steeling herself, She stepped down a narrow flight of creaking wooden steps into darkness. With only the flicker of her small flashlight and the ambient glow from a distant window to guide her, she entered a vast, subterranean chamber that stretched out like a secret vault of time. Before her eyes, the basement revealed its hidden masterpiece. Shelves and filing cabinets laden with stacks of ancient documents, yellowing letters, and carefully preserved photographs. Dust motes danced in the laser beam of her light as she moved slowly between rows of boxes sealed tightly with old rope and wax, each one marked with handwritten labels in spidery print. Amid those fragile containers were albums containing black and white images of struggling families huddled in modest homes, worn children smiling in spite of hardship, and community gatherings that radiated hope, even in the midst of despair. Several piles bore contracts, agreements, and official documents stamped with barely legible seals, evidence of financial support, and pledges made in the name of charity. Her pulse quickened as she rushed toward a sturdy wooden desk at the far end of the chamber, where, on a faded leather-bound folder, lay an envelope addressed to her by name. With hesitant fingers, Alea broke the seal and unfolded a letter written in elegant cursive. It told a story that was at once both heart-wrenching and uplifting. The letter explained that Mr. Henry, once a discreet philanthropist whose compassion had touched innumerable lives, had devoted much of his vast, secret fortune to rescuing families from the clutches of poverty. His efforts in aid were known only to a few, carried out covertly after a brutal betrayal by those in whom he had once placed his trust. The betrayal had shattered his public life, forcing him into self-imposed exile, a decision that led him to live quietly in the mansion, hidden from the scrutinizing eyes of society. The letter went on. With every photograph and document, Mr. Henry had painstakingly chronicled his decades of clandestine charity. Every faded snapshot captured a moment of hope. Every carefully preserved contract was a commitment to uplift those who struggled, and every handwritten note was a vow to never let injustice go unanswered. He had chosen Alea precisely because, in her spirit, he recognized the spark of authentic goodness. She represented the very qualities he believed were necessary to continue his mission. More startling was the admission that he had been terminally ill for some time, a truth he had hidden even from himself, and that his marriage to her, despite the vast difference in their ages, was not merely an act of companionship or convenience, but a deliberate plan to transfer his legacy and resources to someone he trusted absolutely. As she sifted through more files, Alea discovered audio recordings tucked away in a battered tape recorder. Playing one, she heard Mr. Henry's gentle yet fervent voice urging an unseen beneficiary to keep faith in humanity, promising that no act of kindness, however small, would ever be forgotten. In another file, detailed ledgers chronicled his discreet donations to shelters, food banks, and medical funds for impoverished families across the state. A bitter irony emerged. The man she had come to know as a kindly, albeit mysterious, husband had once been at the very forefront of a battle against poverty, a silent guardian whose heroic endeavors had been consigned to shadows. Tears welled up in Alea's eyes as the full magnitude of the revelation set in. The basement was not a den of dark secrets or foreboding misdeeds. It was a hidden archive of hope. Mr. Henry's meticulous records were proof of an unwavering commitment to social justice, born out of personal heartbreak and a deep-seated need to rectify the wrongs of a system that had long forsaken its most vulnerable citizens. He had shielded himself from the world not to conceal nefarious acts, but to remain independent and untainted by a society that had betrayed him. And by choosing her, by marrying her when nothing seemed to have chance left, he had entrusted her with the continuation of his benevolent crusade. In that subterranean chamber, amidst relics of compassion and sacrifice, Alea felt the threads of destiny tightening around her life. The mansion, once a cold, isolated structure, now pulsed with the warmth and purpose of a man's lifelong mission. The weight of his untold history pressed upon her heart like a sacred charge. She was not only his wife, but also the heir to a monumental legacy of charity and goodwill. Every photo, every document, every faded memory in this hidden sanctuary spoke to the immense, albeit secret, contribution he had made to change lives for the better. At that transformative moment, as her eyes glistened with tears and her resolve crystallized, Alea understood the truth that would forever alter her destiny. Mr. Henry's secret was not one of deception or disregard but of profound love for humanity, a love so vast that it defied conventional expectations. His careful orchestration of his isolation had been a test, a final act of faith in her inherent goodness. She was now called to carry forward not only the remnants of his wealth and his home, but also the enduring mission of hope and service that he had so quietly championed. With the weight of this revelation settling within her, Alea gathered the precious documents and recordings, her heart pounding with a mixture of grief, inspiration, and newfound responsibility. The basement, once a realm of darkness and secrecy, had become a vault of light, a testament to a legacy that was meant to be shared with the world. In that moment, she vowed silently that she would honor his memory, and that the world would come to know the story of the secret benefactor who had risked everything to change lives. The next morning, as a gentle mist hovered over the estate's grounds and the first rays of sunlight crept through the tall, dusty windows, Alea's mind churned with the revelations of the previous night. Still trembling from the shock of discovering the hidden archive in the basement, she moved through the halls of the mansion as if in a daze, a mix of sorrow, determination, and a thirst for answers that would not be quenched by silence. It was almost as if the very walls, adorned with faded portraits and relics of a bygone era, were urging her to seek the truth behind the man she had come to love. By mid-morning, curiosity overcame her apprehension. In the grand sitting room, an expansive chamber lined with towering bookshelves and elegant yet time-worn furniture, she found Mr. Henry seated in his favorite armchair, gazing out of a large bay window as if lost in memory. The gentle light caught the silver strands of his hair and the soft lines of sorrow on his weathered face. Noticing her presence, he slowly turned toward her, his eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and solemn resolve. "Alea," he began softly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of unspoken truths, "I believe you deserve to know everything." He paused, drawing a long breath as if summoning the courage to unburden years of guarded secrets. "Last night, I realized that you must have sensed it too, the echoes of the past that haunt these very halls. I never intended for you to discover my secret archive in such a manner, but you must understand that there was a reason for everything I did." Alea's heart pounded as she stepped closer, her wide, earnest eyes searching his for answers. "Mr. Henry, I deserve to know who you really are," she said quietly, her voice trembling yet resolute. "All this time, you have given me kindness and hope, but the strange absences, the strict rule about the basement, I had no idea there was so much hidden in here." Her words were gentle but firm, a plea for clarity that had been building inside her since she first set foot in the mansion. Mr. Henry folded his hands on the armrest, his gaze drifting to a portrait on the wall. A younger version of himself, vibrant and smiling, perhaps a glimpse of the man he once was. "I was once a man driven by passion and conviction," he began, his tone edged with bittersweet nostalgia. "I had a vision, a mission to help those who were invisible to society. In my younger years, I was a benefactor in secret. I used my modest fortune to help struggling families, to provide shelter, food, education. Tiny acts of kindness that, in the grand tapestry of life, could save lives. But the world I lived in was cruel. I was betrayed by those I trusted, people who turned my gifts into opportunities for exploitation. Their treachery shattered me, and I withdrew from public view, hiding my philanthropy behind closed doors." Alea listened intently, her eyes glistening as she absorbed each sorrowful word. "So, the basement?" she whispered. "It isn't a repository for something dark, but rather a vault of your past compassion?" Henry's eyes softened as he nodded slowly. "Yes, my dear. In that basement is the record of my life's work. A collection of photographs, contracts, journals, and recordings that chronicle the secret charities I provided to those in desperate need. It was a legacy built not for public glory, but for quiet dignity. Every document represents a promise to the forgotten souls of our society. I kept these records hidden because I knew that if the world learned of them, I would be exploited, vilified, or seen as nothing more than a relic clinging to an ideal that no longer fit the era." He paused, his voice dropping to a tremulous whisper. But there is something else you must know, Alea. I chose you not by chance, but with purpose. I saw in you the same spark, the same deep-rooted compassion that once fueled my own endeavors. I married you because I believed that you could carry forward this mission, this duty to help the downtrodden. I needed an heir not of blood, but of spirit and heart. Someone whose life had been shaped by struggle and who would not be swayed by mere appearances. The silence that followed was thick with emotion, punctuated only by the distant hum of the wind through the magnolia trees outside. Finally, with a pained expression and trembling admissions, Mr. Henry continued. I have not been well these past months, my dear, worse than I care to admit. I have been battling a terminal illness, one that has slowly eroded my strength and will. I kept it hidden, for I did not want pity, nor did I want it to interfere with my mission. I feared that if you knew I was dying, you might see our marriage as a mere arrangement for sympathy or financial security. But truly, I married you because I wanted to pass on the duty of compassion and care. In you, I see hope for a better tomorrow, a chance to use these remnants of my past to build a future where no one is left behind. Her eyes widened as the enormity of his confession sank in. The kind, gentle man who had enamored her with respect and dignity was now revealing a hidden, heartbreaking truth. So you've been ill, and you planned all of this, not just for your sake, but for the sake of your mission? Alea's voice quavered with a mix of shock, empathy, and newfound responsibility. Yes, Mr. Henry replied softly, his voice laden with the bittersweet gravity of a man releasing decades of guarded secrets. I have always believed that love is not defined by age or physical strength, but by the intention behind it. I wanted to test you not in cruelty, but to see if you had the heart to bear the weight of a legacy built on selfless giving. I chose you because I knew you carried the burdens of poverty and loss, yet your spirit shone brightly in spite of it. You have the power to transform this mansion, this heritage of hidden charity, into a beacon for women and children suffering in the shadows of our society. For long moments, the room swirled with a torrent of conflicted emotions. Alea, grappling with the revelation, felt both the sting of betrayal, that he had hidden his terminal illness and his past life from her, and the overwhelming warmth of understanding. Here was a man who had sacrificed so much in life, who had endured betrayal and isolation, and who had entrusted her with his legacy because he believed in her unyielding goodness. With a steadying breath, Alea reached out and gently clasped Mr. Henry's fragile hand. I understand now, she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. I see the love behind your actions, the pain, and the hope that you harbor. I promise you, I will honor your legacy. I will learn from your past, and I will transform this mansion into what you envisioned. A center of hope, a refuge for those who have been forgotten. I will be the guardian of your mission, and I will ensure that your story, and the kindness you bestowed, reaches every corner of our broken world. A tear slid down Mr. Henry's weathered cheek, and he smiled, a smile of both sorrow and relief. You have chosen truth over fear, and compassion over doubt, he said softly. Now let us begin anew. I am dying, Alea, but in you, I see the everlasting light of a future where love triumphs over despair. You are my heir in spirit, and my greatest hope is that you will carry this forward with dignity and grace. In that sacred moment, the mansion's cold corridors were warmed by a covenant, a promise of transformation born of love and sacrifice. Mr. Henry's revelation rewove the tapestry of their lives, merging their destinies into a shared purpose that transcended age, pain, and hidden sorrow. With the truth laid bare, the path forward was illuminated. A journey to honor the past, heal the wounds of a broken society, and forge a future where every impoverished soul could find sanctuary. Love, Mr. Henry whispered, is not about what we lose but about what we leave behind. I leave behind this legacy, and I leave it to you, so that one day, our story will be remembered as the moment that changed everything. The morning after the final hospital goodbye still clung in the hearts of those who had come to know Mr. Henry's gentle yet secretive life. In the quiet pre-dawn hours, As mist curled low over the sprawling mansion and overgrown gardens, Alea stood in the grand foyer with tear-streaked cheeks and a resolute gaze. The loss of Mr. Henry, a man who had given her not only shelter and the promise of a transformed life, but also entrusted her with a legacy of compassion, felt like the end of an era. And yet, as the sunlight began to crest over the horizon, it also heralded the birth of a new mission: to transform this majestic, solitary estate into a sanctuary for those marginalized by society. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of grief and determination. Word of Mr. Henry's passing spread quickly through local channels. A grieving community learning that the secret benefactor, who had funded countless acts of charity, was no longer among them. In hushed tones and with trembling voices, residents recalled the mysterious man who had once wandered the streets of Louisiana, silently funding shelters and food banks, his every deed documented in a hidden archive. Now, his final wish fell upon Alea, a young woman whose life had been touched by hardship and yet whose heart shone with unmatched compassion. She was determined not to let his mission die with him. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and remnant grandeur, began to buzz with new life under Alea's steady hand. Slowly, she hosted community meetings in the vast drawing room, inviting local women, single mothers, and children from the poorest neighborhoods. With the archival files from the basement now cataloged and evaluated by trusted acquaintances in the nonprofit sector, Alea discovered an intricate tapestry of funds, records of secret donations, and personal letters of hope. These documents revealed the extent of Mr. Henry's decades-long philanthropic crusade. Hundreds of families had, in silence, been lifted from despair by his generosity. Embracing her role as the custodian of his legacy, she vowed that the mansion would serve as a beacon of hope and a center for community assistance. Over the next few months, Alea spearheaded an ambitious renovation project. Skilled volunteers, local tradespeople, and even former beneficiaries of Mr. Henry's hidden charity joined her initiative. The once desolate halls transformed into vibrant spaces, a community resource center replete with a library, a counseling wing, and even a small clinic to serve those in need. A shelter was established for women and children facing domestic abuse and homelessness, and a modest education program was set up to empower the youth through vocational training and tutoring. As paint refreshed the old walls and discarded furniture was replaced with functional, warm pieces donated by locals, the mansion began to embody the values instilled by Mr. Henry: kindness, resilience, and the belief that even the most broken places could be rebuilt with love. News of this remarkable transformation spread like wildfire. What had once been the whispered talk of an eccentric old man's secret was now a viral sensation. A story of how a young, impoverished black woman had taken up the mantle of mercy and turned a decaying estate into a vibrant center for social change. Local television stations and newspapers clamored to cover her efforts. Headlines celebrated her as the girl who didn't sell out, she changed everything. Social media feeds brimmed with before and after photos of the mansion, along with heartfelt testimonials from community members whose lives had been touched by the new center. Bloggers and influencers hailed the project as a turning point in the fight against systemic poverty and discrimination. The story of Alea and her surprising inheritance of Mr. Henry's legacy resonated far beyond Louisiana. It became a national symbol of hope, an emblem of how trust, benevolence, and fortitude can transform not only buildings but entire lives. In time, as the center flourished, Alea became a sought-after speaker at conferences and community events. The mansion, once shrouded in lonely silence, now echoed with laughter, music, and the energetic chatter of changed lives. She addressed crowds with a gentle yet powerful eloquence that belied her young age. On one particularly memorable afternoon, standing on the freshly painted steps of the estate with reporters gathered around, she delivered the speech that would become the defining statement of her journey. I stand here before you today, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a steward of a legacy built on love, trust, and the unwavering belief that every human being deserves dignity. Love is not defined by age or appearances. It's defined by the intent behind our actions. I married Mr. Henry because I believed, even in my darkest hours, that his kindness could light a path to a better future. And now, as I commit to carrying his mission forward by transforming this mansion into a haven for those most in need, I ask you to remember, trust sometimes saves lives. Our society's true strength lies in its compassion, and together, we can build a future where every voice is heard and every life is cherished. Her words radiated a sincerity that seemed to bridge the vast chasm between her tumultuous past and a future teeming with promise. The audience was silent, enraptured by her determination and vulnerability. Each listener felt the profound truth behind her message. The story of a young woman who, by embracing a mystery meant to test her spirit, discovered the power of love not as a transaction, but as a covenant of hope. The moment resonated on television screens and on social media platforms across the nation, sparking a renewed conversation about systemic injustice, community empowerment, and the transformative potential of individual courage. In the coming weeks, as the center opened its doors to hundreds seeking refuge and aid, Alea's story continued to inspire and mobilize efforts for social change. From town halls to legislative bodies, her narrative became a catalyst, prompting elected officials to champion policies aimed at reforming outdated support systems. In the quiet aftermath of that emotional day, as dusk settled gently around the newly lit center, Alea stood alone on the mansion's veranda, the warm glow of hope reflecting in her eyes. The journey from despair to joy, from secrets and isolation to empowerment and community, had been long and fraught with challenges, but it echoed a simple, yet profound truth. Sometimes, life writes scripts better than any movie. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story, because sometimes life writes scripts better than cinema.